Okay, yes, yes. So, okay, well, welcome everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Today is Monday, June 17th, and this is the regular meeting of the Parks and Rec Commission. Just a couple of announcements and reminders. And since I haven't been here in 2 months to chair a meeting, I'm going to say it. Please talk into the microphone so that Jackie, our recording secretary, can get all the good tidbits of information. So Barry Duncan will not be with us tonight. He is traveling, so he is excused. A couple of announcements. City Hall will be closed this Wednesday, June 19th, in observance of the Juneteenth holiday. We have the summer concert series, which began on June 4th. So we've had 2 concerts. We have 10 to go, so come out and join us. We have a good lineup. For those who may have signed up, the second subscription trash collection will start on June 28th for those residents who have subscribed for the second pickup. You should be seeing stickers on the outside of the trash container, the trash cart, which designates for the second pickup. So if you're not seeing that, please contact City Hall. We have July 4th coming up right around the corner. As usual, we have a day packed with fun events for children and adults. The children's games will take place on 2nd Street at 9 a.m. The boat parade will kick off from Roosevelt Inlet at 1:30 and will come down to City Dock and the Fisherman's Wharf and make the turn back up the canal. The Doodah Parade steps off 5-ish. They're a little loose. And then we have the fireworks. So we have a great day planned. Everybody, I hope, can come out and enjoy the festivities. Those are my announcements. Are there any other announcements from the table before we start with the agenda? Nope. Hearing none, we will move into item B1, which is approval of the minutes for the meeting of May 20th. And I hope you all have had an opportunity to review them. Are there any corrections, comments?
There is a correction.
Pardon?
There is a correction.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm saying I wasn't here. I can't.
Okay. Okay, so the one correction, it said on the minutes for Juneteenth, it said 50 food vendors.
Mm-hmm.
It should be 50 vendors, not food vendors.
Okay. All right. That is noted. Thank you. Any other corrections or comments? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to accept the minutes with the noted correction?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay. The meeting minutes are approved. So we will move into the commissioners' reports and updates from other partners that are working in the parks. Mark and Trina, do you want to start with George Smith Park? It's a little busy.
Yes, just a little bit. On the 31st of May, the artwork was shuffled around a little bit in the park based on some neighbors' requests. And, and then that was done. On the 9th, there was a nice tree dedication ceremony in the park for Helene Harris in recognition of her many years of community service through her work in the farmers market. Very nice ceremony. Marty was there. The mayor was there as well. And on the 15th, met with members of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee regarding adding bike racks in the park. And we took a walk around, and we decided to pick the time at 10 o'clock on Saturday when the farmer's market was there. And that's when, the heaviest volume of bicycle traffic is around. And what we decided to do was that we would add a rack right off where the parking lot is. And then there's the walkway from the parking lot, and then the Jiffy Johns are on one side, and then the garbage bins are on the other. What we decided to do was start with the racks behind the garbage bins, because the public would have access to the parking lot, and then right into that walkway, that's a no parking area anyhow. So we figured when people would enter the park, if they would have an opportunity to do that, then maybe they would take advantage of that and ride, instead of riding through the grass and chaining their bikes to the fence. And, part of the conversation was, since I'm there every Saturday, helping to set up, we can just keep an eye on the situation. If people start to use the racks and we need more, then we can just get together again and talk about it.
Okay,
Okay?
sounds good. So you have an ongoing built-in assessment of need.
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
So when will the bike racks be installed?
What they need to do is just go back to their committee and share, pretty much the content of our conversation, talk about it getting approved, and then they're actually going to build them. So.
And when you mentioned behind the trash cans, is that underneath the trees, or am I thinking another place where?
I don't believe that's under the trees, that side of the walkway. I could be wrong, but.
I'm just
Yeah,
trying to get my visual here.
all right. Yeah, there's no trees or anything on that walkway coming in.
Okay.
Because when you go in, like, the playground's to the right a little bit, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Thank you. And for George H.P. Smith Park as well, as you know, the Juneteenth celebration will be June 22nd. It will start, the official celebration starts from 1 to 6, although we will be setting up on Friday on the 21st with the tents and blocking off the road and taping and the trash cans set in place, the picnic tables, all of the things that we normally do the day before Juneteenth. And I'm happy to say this year's Juneteenth is probably the largest one ever in our 3 years. So that's pretty nice to see the community coming together, and the nonprofit organizations and the retail organizations. And so at this point, since the last meeting, we're probably at, if everybody shows up, we're probably at about 70 vendors, different vendors. So we're excited for that. And the tents, Mr. Harry Kaiser and Ed Tesson are part of that team for Juneteenth planning, and they will set that up. And it looks like the weather is going to be very good. It might be hot. So I've been informing during our Wednesday meetings for those volunteers, which we seem to have quite a bit of volunteers this year, so I'm happy to say that as well. We're letting them know to please hydrate all day, and to also have cooling cloths. I have purchased probably every cooling cloth on the East Coast just to, have, safety, and make sure people stay cool. So this year we're very excited, and Farmers Market has partnered with us from the beginning. So we're excited that they remain a partner and will be joining in and helping us with the setup.
Thank you, Trina.
Oh, the backup plan was to be at Cape and Lopin High School, but the weather report looks like we're not going to need that, so we will, probably Thursday evening or Friday, we will call and cancel that reservation, so there will be no charge, and also cancel the police that we rented for the school.
Thank you, Trina. Mark, I had one question regarding the bike racks. Did I hear you mention that they're going to be built? Do you know who's building them?
I believe it's members, like some of the members of the committee, they do that, and they said they were gonna use like the PVC, that decking,
Okay.
material in order to do that.
Okay. I was not aware that there was that skill set on.
Well,
The reason why I asked was because last year, the committee had made a recommendation to put some bike racks down on some of the cross the road, like Michigan and East Canal and Oregon, and they were built by somebody that has been building bike racks for years for Bethany Beach. So I didn't know if they were, because I think he was trying to kind of slow his business down. So I didn't know if that's what the reference was to him, but,
well, yeah, I could circle back and certainly ask.
okay. All right, I'm on that committee and they're meeting next week, so I can ask.
Okay,
That's all right,
all right,
just curious.
okay,
Thank you.
sure.
Are there any other questions for Mark or Trina? Okay, we'll move over to Ray and Zwannendale Park.
Okay, it was a pretty eventful month at Zwannendale Park this month. Starting out with the repair of the sewer line, finally, after a couple of years, but it went very well. You know, the city did a great job getting the line repaired and then also re-bricking the walkway into the herb garden. There was some concern about the irrigation not being turned on, so, you know, Lewis and Bloom stepped up and, you know, hand watered a lot of the plants and that had been planted. You know, the summer annuals had just been planted a couple weeks before. So that all worked out, worked out very well. And I'm going to meet, and then the irrigation, we asked to have the irrigation set to summer hours, which it was. I talked to the landscape company and they upped it to summer hours. And I'm going to meet with him next week just to kind of, so I can understand it, and also take a look at some of the heads. Some of the sprinkler heads out onto Savannah Road are getting onto the sidewalk too much. We want to back those up to make sure that it's not wasting water. And you know, we worked a lot, Lewis and Bloom worked very, very hard in anticipation of last week's garden tour, and the park looked absolutely beautiful last week, so that was great. In the herb garden, you know, this is big herb garden news. The willow fence that's there is going to be replaced. And there is a guy named Howard Peller from Living Willow Farms. He grows his own willow, and he is one of the master fence builders with willow. And he's coming out, Lewis and Bloom, you know, donated the money and to have him come in, and he's coming in on July 6th to do that fence. So probably after that, it'll be a brand new look. The fence looks good, it's just that the willow has gotten aged and is a little brittle. So they want to update that. And that was it for Z Park. You want me to do the garden too?
Sure.
Yep.
Yes, the
So the
community
community garden, you know, the community garden has grown so much. The big news for the garden this month was the purchase of an additional shed, because the garden had outgrown the one shed that was there with all the tools, equipment, mowers and everything. So an additional shed was purchased. It was delivered last week. Makes for a lot of room that's up there. And also we found a box turtle nest for the third year in a row that we protected. Now we always protect it. It's in little different places, but they come over from the marsh into the garden to lay their eggs. And so it's pretty exciting to have that. And then the other thing is we had education. We continue to have educational events every month for the community, and the next one will be in August. So that's it for the garden.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Ray from the table?
I have a question. How do you all announce or promote your educational events there at the community gardens?
That's but so we do it, there is an article that'll go into Cape Gazette. There was an article that went in the Cape Gazette earlier. And then we will also have, the bulletin board up at the garden always announces it. We're doing 3 this year. We're just gonna see what kind of result we get. The first one was pretty well attended, so, yeah. Just through the Cape Gazette and also through the bulletin board at the garden.
Would you consider putting that in, having it put on the city website as well, or are you trying to keep it as a manageable site?
Yeah, I don't think the garden is on the city website.
We have not included nonprofits,
Right.
their events on the city website because it would get very, very busy if we were including everybody's activities on the
Yeah, and
on the
I think
website.
honestly as well too, I think the garden wants to, even though the garden, we lease the land from the city, it's really, it's a separate nonprofit organization, and we kind of just want to, it's probably better to keep that delineation between the city and the garden.
Thank you for that explanation.
Bill, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have, for the herb garden, we call him the Willow Man. He comes in on the 6th, but he will actually be assembling the fence on Monday, July 8th and July 9th, and possibly the next day. So I think that's gonna be all day, and anybody wants to stop by and they can observe it and maybe even help them out.
Okay.
July 7th and 8th, that was.
Pardon me?
July 7th and 8th, is that?
No, July 8th, Monday and Tuesday are his main work days, and possibly Wednesday.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, moving along to Marty and the tree program.
Let's see if I can get this right. Okay, so this past month, we had our annual planting under the Urban and Community Forestry Grant Program. This year, we had it in the buffer between Canary Creek subdivision and a farm field. There's a very wide buffer there that's partly treed, but it turns out that about half of it had been mowed over the years, so we're in the process of reclaiming it and putting quite a bit of it eventually back in trees. So this particular planting was for 20 trees. The contractor did the planting, and it's all native trees. They're on we chose small trees, so hopefully they'll not interfere with the farm field eventually. We also, it turns out, if you, those of you who came to volunteer night, volunteer day, the gift from the city this year was Chickasaw plum trees in small pots that we got from the state. And we got 70-some, I don't know,
75.
but there were several left over, so we planted 13 of those Chickasaw plums in that same buffer. It turns out they do very well in dry conditions, sandy conditions, and that's what we have in that buffer. So they're there, and actually my sister was here visiting, and she likes planting trees, so we didn't hire a contractor. My sister and I planted the trees. So, and then we also put one Chickasaw plum here in Stango Park. It's over yonder, and we put one in George Smith Park. So we'll have plum trees all over the place. And then we also had a contractor plant a tree, Japanese lilac tree on Savannah Road to replace a tree that had failed a year ago. It had failed because a truck ran over it, so, but that's replaced now. And then we have a lot of watering to do, and thank goodness we have a city water truck and a summer hire, because he has been busy. It's been very, very dry. We did finally get some rain a few nights ago, but the ground still needs a lot of water, and to keep these trees growing, we need to water them on a regular basis. So that's a wonderful thing to have. This morning I met with Lewis and Bloom Children's Learning Garden Committee right here in Stango, And Christine spearheading that, so I'll let you report more on that when it gets to you. And just for the record, the other day at the farmer's market, I counted, and when I went in there, there were 20 bikes chained up to that fence, the playground fence. And then I walked through the market, and on the other side of the market, I could see there were some bikes, I think they were chained up to the, some of the new trees. They have metal posts holding up deer netting for the new trees. So they were with the new trees over there. So I don't know if we're gonna have to put bike racks here and there and everywhere. We'll just have to keep an eye on that. I don't care if they're chained up to the metal fence post, but I don't want them chained up to the trees.
So we'll need to notify farmers market people as well to let them know if they
I
can,
don't
if they
know.
can.
If they see it,
it,
if they
yeah.
can deter it, yeah.
Deter it, yeah. Yeah, it's because I guess people were riding in from that side, from the school side, anyway. So, it's always something. And that's all I have.
Once it starts, it's difficult to deter. We've had the issue downtown on Second Street with locking up to parking meters and lamp posts and bollards. So if we can deter that, even if it's putting a sign up on the protected trees to please don't lock your bikes. I'm just thinking, once the netting comes down and the tree's viable and big enough, they'll
Yeah.
lock to the
Oh, yeah.
tree.
Oh, yeah,
And
that's-
we don't
yeah.
want that,
Don't
so,
want that. Yeah.
just a
Well, do
thought.
we have any sign, we could put a lot of signs up, no bike signs.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
We
okay.
don't want a whole lot of that
Yeah.
either, but specifically on the trees.
Yeah, the trees themselves, yeah, that.
Would
that could
probably be a good
That could
spot.
actually be damaging to the tree to put a chain around the tree.
So why don't we put bike racks there?
Well, that's the discussion that we just had, is that there might be more locations for bike racks. But the other issue is when you're putting them right in the middle of the park, next to where people are inappropriately parking their bikes, then you have the landscape issue. Getting around the bike racks unless they're on some sort of a pad, which raises another issue. So there are multiple considerations, so. Are there any other questions for Marty?
I have one. Marty, we had this conversation before, these trees are planted, they're watered, but other than that, there's really no plan to keep the vines from growing up them and that sort of thing. I'm just wondering how we're gonna address that.
In the buffer?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's gonna be an ongoing challenge, and no, we haven't completely solved that problem. For the short run, we can be mowing around the trees, and that'll help. But that's something Janet and I have to take on for the long haul, yeah.
So the buffer plan is a multi-phase plan. It can't be done all at once. What was done this spring was to clear out as much of the vines and the invasives that we could do, cutting it down to a manageable size. So I think we recognize that there is certainly a lot of work and ongoing that needs to be done, and that plan will continue to evolve as we go down the buffer each year.
I do have one more thing. I was remiss in not acknowledging Bill was the one who planted the Chickasaw plum here in Stango Park. Thank you, Bill.
it was a tough job. A 1 gallon container, or 2 gallon container.
All right, so Christine and Bill, if you want to talk about Stango and Stango Extended?
Sure. For Stango Park, as Marty mentioned, she and I attended the Children's Learning Garden members meeting today, and it was held here on location, and it was discussed options for the future of the garden. Co-chairs Nancy and Fred Phillips called the meeting, which was conducted by Jody Russell, and Children's Learning Garden members and volunteers were also present. 4 alternatives were presented by Jody, 4 options. Option number 1 was simply to do nothing and remain in the same footprint, with the current garden, which is 30 by 40 foot, which is 1,200 square feet. Option number 2 would be to expand the square footage out towards Kings Highway into the existing Lewes and Bloom annual bed, adding 400 square feet in that direction, and expand 7 feet in the direction of the bike path, which would add an additional 280 square feet to the garden. There were also options discussed for expanding toward the water pump and the deodar cedars, and this would increase the garden by a total of almost 1,500 square feet in its existing location. Marty, also, we discussed limbing up and pruning the trees in that area, and also the options at this point would not require tree removal. And that was part of, main part of our discussion. Option number 3 is creating a proposed new garden to the space next to the pavilion. And for those of you not familiar, that's behind the library here, basically. According to the proposed plans, would be a 60 by 80 foot area and would include a proposed garden shed and seating area and hardscaping for ADA accessibility. Option number 4 is a combination of options 1 and 3 and would include a proposal for a new garden and keep the existing garden. And discussion ensued amongst the members of the Children's Learning Garden group. Questions about the new garden revolved around future volunteer base, expensive construction of new garden, including irrigation, need for questions about a need for ADA accessibility, usage of the pavilion for programming, and parking and city approval for use of open space. Cost estimates for the new garden were not available. Questions about the existing garden were about how much the children and adults both like the shady area for programming and the mature tree canopy, which provides atmosphere and the space, and how it ties in nicely with the story walk program provided by the library. Cost obviously would be far less, and irrigation would be used, less irrigation would be used in that area since it's existing irrigation. The general consensus that I could gather, Marty, you can help me out with this, but it seemed as though there was a discussion and a general consensus was to leave the garden where it is and perhaps expand it, and that they would consider option number 2 in some form and present their discussion to the Lewes and board members for a decision. And that was it for my report.
Yeah, it seemed, now they have to go back to their, of course, their board and before they have final recommendations, but that seemed to be where that committee was leading, yeah.
Any questions?
Are they aware that they'll have to come before Parks and Rec?
Yes, they're aware that they have to come before Parks and Rec and get approval from the city as well.
Any, no questions?
I actually do have a question, excuse me. Christine, I think you identified 4 options.
Yes, that's correct.
And the 4th one, did I understand that to be keeping the existing, but then there would be an additional location?
That's correct,
And
yes.
was that location one of the other locations that were in option 2 and 3 or whatever? You know, there were other locations that were, where would that be?
Option 4 would be to keep the existing garden, and there was a discussion about whether or not that would become some type of a perennial or cutting garden.
I see.
Not that it would remain a children's learning garden area,
Okay,
but that Lewes and Bloom would maintain that existing garden area
right.
in its original footprint, and then add the 60 by 80 square foot area to the open space area behind the library.
I see. Thank you.
So there were, and that was presented very, very well by one of the members of the Children's Learning Garden. All 4 of those options were presented
Okay.
for discussion.
And with that, if that plot was created over in the open space, that would require a shed as well? Is that right?
There are plans, if I'm, I believe there are plans for a shed.
Thank you,
Mm-hmm.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
So that, go back on the plan. So that's option 3, is proposing a shed.
That would include a
That would
garden
be-
shed, yes,
Okay.
yes. And I sent this to Jackie, so she has that.
Oh, okay,
You don't have
great.
to make notes.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Keeps me busy.
Jackie, I think, got all of that.
Okay. Bill, did you have anything to add?
Just that, summer's kicked in, the flowers are starting to grow, we're keeping them watered, and tomorrow is, our concert series at 7 o'clock, and we have hot salsa, I believe. And they were a big draw last year, and I expected we'd have about the same, somewhere around 700 some people. So if you want to hear music, come tomorrow night. Yeah, Patrick did do a touch-up with mulch in the various gardens, including Stango.
Parks, but he did do touch-up mulch here at Stango.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
That's it.
All right, thank you, Bill. Ann, what do we have for recreation?
Yes, so Canalfront Park has the playground, which is our big concern. And following our discussion last month, I reached out to Janet to tell her that there were maintenance problems. That mothers had told me that the playground was not exactly safe. There were nails, there were handrails that were not steady. So the maintenance has been done. I received a list of all the things that were done to make it safe for the summer. So it is my understanding that until the new playground is installed, we will keep this one open. And I have to say that a lot of mothers really like that playground. And so this is a good thing. I was just thinking of the intensity of construction there's going to be at the Canalfront Park between the Overfalls project and the new playground. So I don't know how that's going to be organized, but it's not going to be a small thing.
No, and quite frankly, we've had major projects in the park. This will be the 3rd year. We had the tennis and pickleball courts resurfaced, so there was a closure for that project. Last year, we did the boardwalk, replaced the decking at the net house, so there was a closure for that project. And then now the playground. So it's, I would say it's a premier park. It's very well utilized, and Rodney, this segue right into your report. But with this particular issue, it is a safety issue. So we do want to make certain that we take care of that project. I did speak with the maintenance department manager again today about laying down the safety surfacing, and they will be trying to move some safety surfacing from George Smith Park over to the Canalfront Park Playground. And then I think they've replaced hand railings, they've checked the screws on the benches so that they're secured. I think there may still be 1 or 2 nail pops that need to be fixed, but, so.
Mothers don't much like that rail around, that little edge around.
Well, that will be going away with the new playground.
Right.
So it's going to be whichever vendor the commission decides to move forward with tonight. All 3 of them have the poured rubber surface. So that will make accessibility, an accessibility improvement.
don't know if I can mention this too, but there were waterfront men that were at the coffee hour and that are asking for access to the canal, parking and also slips. And so I spoke to Janet about this, and she suggested they make a FOIA request.
So-
I wrote back to Sean and he thanked me.
Okay.
We'll see what happens.
So that recommendation for the FOIA request was based on the information that you gave me, that these gentlemen indicated that when the park was being planned and developed, that there was, quote, an agreement that they would have commercial fishing access at the park. And I've not been able to find out anything about that, so if they make a FOIA request, we'll go through the proper channels, but I'm not aware that that was in an agreement.
I
So,
just passed on the information.
mm-hmm, yep, okay. Any questions for Ann? Okay. Segue right into Rodney.
Canalfront Park, well, I'll just, I guess, start with the playground. The friends are all very excited about it, look forward to having it done. We have to keep in mind that new surface, which is really critical, has to be done in a temperature-sensitive period of time. You can't put it off till the fall and have cold nights, perhaps. So they have to get it down when it's best, so you can have a good warranty on the project. So that's all critical. And I think that, well, I guess there's going to be more discussion about the park, the playground later on. Back to other items, the picnic tables that I missed last month's meeting, but I know that we all approved picnic tables. 2 picnic tables were assembled and installed, and seem to be very popular. We still have a lot of phragmites coming up on that canal bank,
Okay.
and I know that District of Landscapes, I don't think they came in and did an application yet. But now when they're growing so vigorously, is a good time to get something on them. The other thing is, I noticed that the temporary sculpture has been removed. We still have the slab.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a date on when the slab is going to be removed?
We don't yet. I think that there was some desire to try and repurpose that slab,
What does that mean?
to have it moved to a location where,
Oh, my.
yes, yes. So,
I'm sorry, I shouldn't.
so I need to get a couple of estimates. There is a local house mover, raises houses, and the question is where? But it cannot,
Slab.
it is quite a slab. Yep, yep. I see if Shea Concrete wants to come back and take it out.
Janet, why? Why would you move it? Or where would you move it?
That's the question, is where, because if we can't move it, then it will have to be taken out of the existing location.
I would just might add that whatever you do, whether you try and relocate it or tear it out, it's gonna be very disruptive, because the equipment to get in there is gonna tear up the grass and all, and compact the soil and so on. So, you know, maybe if you're gonna do that, when you're gonna do it, something will happen. It may be coordinated with when what portion of that park will be used for the playground. They're gonna have to have lay-down space for equipment. They can't just come in and build a new playground
Right,
on the footprint.
right.
So, and they're gonna have to have equipment, and so it would be a good time, I would think, to look at coordinating all that together. And even with the overfalls, structure, if they're that far along in the structure.
Right. I think there's a lot of coordination that needs to be done,
Yeah,
so.
okay. The only other item I had, was, we had our first concert on Thursday, the 250 people there at the very beginning of the concert.
Great.
And then more showed up, and they seemed to enjoy it. So we discussed today, they came and just, for those of you who might have been there or watched or seen it, the band came and parked their vehicles around the pavilion, and we're not gonna permit that anymore. We're gonna have them unload and go park over by the baseball fields, and then once the concert is over and the park clears out, they can come back and collect so if anybody's wondering about that, that's something that kind of slipped by us.
Okay.
And the other thing is, we want to make sure that we have banners up like this to let people know what's happening, and also give credit to our supporters. And the banners that were there kind of were on the pavilion, and they kind of hide the band, which is not such a great thing. So we've been rethinking how to do that. You'll hear about it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'd like to hear about that.
I know you would. More coordination and some
Yeah.
thinking about how best to address those needs, but not do it in a way that's, certainly doesn't hide the band.
Right.
And they were kind
Right.
of dancing around behind the banners.
Okay. All right. What we do here is we have yard signs, basically, that identify the sponsors, and then we pick them up and put them away so that, the park is back restored. The banner's something different, that stays up for the season, but this is a different setup than what is at the gazebo.
Okay,
So we can talk about that.
we do need to.
Okay.
We had a lot of ideas, and I don't think we're just gonna go out and do something. I think we wanna talk to you first.
Okay. Great. Did you,
The other item had to do with accessibility, and that's next on the, should I just wait until?
long range, short range, long range plans?
Well, it's under old business, D1, possible action regarding Canalfront. Oh, let's play.
That's the playground. Yeah.
All right, well, then let me just say that one of the items I want to bring to everyone's attention is that over the years, when the park was first designed and installed, it had crushed stone paving throughout. And that's a very nice paving material, to be sure, but it offers real problems with accessibility, particularly people in wheelchairs with narrow wheels. I think it's time that and I brought it up today at our Friends of Canalfront Park meeting, and they're in agreement that we need to start paying some real attention to that and try and get it as a future capital improvement project for the park. One of the stories I heard is about, the city has renovated the restrooms. We got these really nice restrooms now, but you can't get to them in a wheelchair. That's kind of a problem. But it's not just a simple matter of paving some areas. It needs to be thought through. I'm not suggesting that we pave the whole park. I think that would be the wrong direction to go. Very expensive, but also it would really change the character of the park. But we do have issues about the parking lot, for example, which is still, except for the drives that come in because they're sloped, they were paved. They weren't originally. But we should think about paving that parking lot with a permeable surface. It's still going to generate enough stormwater that then it's going to impact the stormwater management system and those catch basins at the foot of the parking lot there. So I think we're going to have to address that in some way. And then determine where we can put accessible surfaces to get people from various points in the park. And clearly the pavilion is a very important part, and I've heard in the past where, there's a wedding out there, but you can't get Aunt Midge out there because she's in a wheelchair. It's very hard. And frankly, I think people in wheelchairs don't like to be dragged around through gravel. So we're going to be looking at, my proposal proposal is that we look at the park, we look at the plan, we come up with some suggestions about what we pave and what we don't pave, and then turn that into a series of projects with a scope and a projected cost, and even a phased approach, perhaps, so we're not doing it all at once. And go to the city and say to the city, you know, these are the projects we have, and maybe this is the way we'd like to phase it over the next 5 years or whatever. And that also enables the city to go after funding for grant money for these projects. So it needs some real organization before we even start.
Right. So I think that project, and, you know, when you're talking about parks and recreation, accessibility and equity is, you know, in the forefront. So I think that this is long overdue. I think we can have further discussion on it in the 2 new business items, which are the short-range and long-range plans for the parks. And when we have that discussion, I would like it to be both the individual parks, but looking at the parks as a system, as a whole, all of the parks, because we can't be doing a major project over in Canalfront Park in 2 years and then have 2 more parks that we're doing major projects in. So we really have to look at the parks as a system and really plan out any project for any park and then the budget. But I think that that's a good lead into that discussion when we get to that point in the agenda.
So are we going to talk about this again tonight as new business?
We're talking,
Yes.
you didn't see the agenda, it's a general discussion, but that's where it would fall.
And there are other things in the park that the Friends group, for example, would like to see done in the future. And I told them, look, we're not going to hold off. That all needs to be put in
Right.
kind of a strategic implementation.
Exactly. Rodney, one other thing, we had talked about the kiosk there by the basketball courts, and you had, and I sent you a late email, so you might not have seen it.
I responded with even a later email this
Oh,
afternoon.
so I haven't seen the later.
I haven't seen it, so I'll
Okay.
just quickly say,
Yeah, if you can just set that discussion, because that was,
that kiosk is not used because nobody could find the key to open it. And it said that's the answer I got. And, but by the end of the meeting, we did find it.
somebody had a key, right?
So somebody has a key to open it. And apparently that kiosk was built as an Eagle Scout project.
That's my understanding.
It was really a nice job. I went and looked at it. But it needs some repair. And the consensus was among the Friends that the Overfalls people and the Historic Society and the Friends group of the park, we all can really make use of that kiosk and share it. It does need some repair work, and one of the suggestions was that the Dirty Hands crew of the Overfalls come out and make the repairs on that. And Bob Gary, who's on the board, is going to approach Overfalls tomorrow at their meeting and see if they're willing to help us out in that regard. That would
Okay.
save the city from having to do it. If
Okay.
it's okay with you.
Yeah, if we just know what they're doing, and
I think that, I looked at it, I think the glazing needs to be replaced. It's some kind of a polymer that's faded.
it's faded and turned yellow, and, right.
Simple things like that. It's
Yeah.
nothing
And the
major.
framing around the door itself
Yeah,
also needs to be
The door frame. So I think it's things that can
Okay.
easily be taken care of.
Well, and I think it's a nice collaboration with the other organizations that are working in the park and holding activities in the park for their nonprofit, to be able to advertise there, that, because it's all contiguous, so I think that's fine.
That's the idea.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Rodney? Okay. Miss Kay.
Just one thing about the ADA, we don't have to guess what's hard for people to do. We can ask someone who has mobility issues to go through our parks and tell us what's a problem. I went to college decades before the ADA came into effect, but at my college, the class president had to spend the winter using a wheelchair at all times as an eye-opener about how hard it was in a school where from corner to corner it was 1 mile up a hill. So, and none of the, elevators, nothing was accessible. So I think that that's an eye-opener, and it lets you know what's hard for people. And so that's just a thought for later in the discussion, but I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you.
The beaches are very busy. It's been wonderful. We've had, thankfully, great weather. People have been enjoying themselves. Water's a little chilly for some of us. Lifeguards are unfazed by that. The buoy system they have in, I think, is working well. They continue to work very well with the public. Respectful, highly interactive, and helpful, kind, approaching everyone and reaching out, which is terrific. The public are using the QR code, which I think is helping with cut down on canopies and things like that, which is terrific. The lifeguards are using sandwich boards to communicate messages. And one of the things on the QR code that we have is if there are white caps, don't use your umbrella. And we had that in the last couple of weekends. We've had white caps and umbrellas have been everywhere. So people in Ocean City were hurt by umbrellas. So that's been, I think, a very good guide for people to know how to succeed with your umbrella. Let's see. I think especially the QR code has been a great way to give information without sign pollution. The sandwich boards get taken up every night, so that's terrific. There are now some T sections to the Moby mats, and so I was watching what people did, and people will go wherever the mats take them, is what I have learned. The great thing about them being as a T is that rather than stop at the end and then decide where to go and then call your friend and try to find them and look for them and take off your shoes or put your shoes on, people will now go to the side and do that. So it's a help with traffic. I think wherever we put them, people will use them. Those mats make a huge difference for everyone. So they are money well spent, time well spent. I know it's laborious to put them in place, well worth it. So very grateful for those mats. So that's pretty much my report. Things I think have been good. Sunday morning there was a lot of trash in the Savannah Beach parking lot. It may only have been one bag. I couldn't tell. I picked it up myself as best I could until the bags I had with me were full. But that's been the only time I've seen a lot of trash. The lifeguards told me that Memorial Day weekend Saturday and July 4th, there will be a lot of glass. And there are beachgoers who are not really there for the beach. So they're different. I will say this year, everyone is quiet. If you faced into the wind, you would have thought there were 10 people there rather than full. I'm thinking maybe the COVID angst that everyone was feeling is sort of washed out, and people seem very happy to be there, so we're grateful that we've got a place where people want to come. So
Good.
Miss
my report.
Miss Kay, do we have, I sit on the beach almost every evening, and just observe, people watch. But my question is, do we have any warnings or anything that says for, children digging deep holes?
So as not to dig a trench?
Well, yeah, or,
That would
and just
collapse.
dig and leave it.
The lifeguards interact with that. I need to check what I have on the QR code. We could adjust the type on there, because what happens is when kids are digging trenches, that's when there's a collapse
Mm-hmm,
and people can suffocate.
right.
If they're digging a large hole, that's not gonna happen, but they should still fill those back in.
Right,
The holes that we do see are from the bonfires the night before, and they're not deep,
mhm,
they might be a foot deep.
right.
And they're large, but I'll check the QR code language and see, and I'll also see, cause I have proposed language for the chapter 63, and see if it's in there as well, because that's a good point, because people don't know when you wanna
Right, I was
avoid
just concerned about
tragedy.
safety and, you know, when people are walking along the beach and there's holes left that people have dug, I don't
Yes.
want anybody to step in a hole and break
Mhm.
an ankle or
Yep.
a leg or something like that. And I've seen the holes, but this was like after 6, so it's not like during the
Right,
lifeguard time
Mhm.
of the day.
right, I'll put it on those two places if I don't already have it. And I'll mention something to the guards and see what they see. Because you do see kids with military entrenching tools, I don't know where they get them, but you've gotta be really careful, cause those things are knife sharp, and you've got them near your feet. And they will go at it and really create some major construction projects, so I'll put something on there, thank you.
I have a question about what is on the QR. Do you have something about staying off the dunes?
Yes.
Oh, you do?
Yes, and I've only seen it once, and it was a father and 4 kids, and they were arguing with the lifeguard, who obviously stuck to his guns and made them jump over the fence and come down. And that's, so far, so good.
Okay, I'm
Which is-
talking about the dunes that are along the inlet. You know, from Savannah Beach down to
Right,
the yacht club.
right. Oh, those
Is-
I'm not, those
are there-
aren't in my purview.
Right.
I only have the
Yeah,
garden.
well, I'd like to bring this up later.
Yeah, I mean, I think stay off the dune signs should be where we have dunes, but that area is not my purview.
Yeah.
But perhaps the
I would
city
like to-
has those signs that could be installed.
Well, I think that, so some of the beach rules are the same on the guarded beach and the unguarded beach, and staying off the dunes is one of them. So I think it's clarifying what rules pertain to the unguarded beach, and maybe getting QR codes for that section of the beach. Canopies are permitted. That's one of the biggest difference, in that it is an unguarded beach. And we have put up on each of the dune crossings that this is an unguarded beach, so that people are aware of that. So I think it's just, a delineation of the signage for the guarded beach versus the unguarded beach. And I think we can put up QR codes on the existing signs like we did down at the 2 guarded beaches.
Yes,
A couple of years ago, before the beach washed away, Denrick had come out and put posts and lines
Mm-hmm.
at the foot of the dunes to keep people from going up into the dunes. And
there,
I would assume they're gonna do that again in the future.
there is at the dune that is the north border of the guarded beach. There is there. And I think it's sporadic north of that.
Mm-hmm, it is.
But in the past, it went up to past the yacht club.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that particular fencing has taken a bit of a beating by Mother Nature.
Yeah.
Getting Denrec to come out and redo that, I mean, that's their responsibility. I can talk to them and see when they plan on revisiting that and putting up the signage again about staying off the dune. But, yeah, that's Denrec's
Right.
responsibility.
Do the QR,
Contest, in 2019, sign contest, keep off the dunes. And they're beautiful drawings, I went and looked, and, why not have these signs? on
Who
those
did that contest? Who did that contest?
Schools, people, adults,
Oh.
children, they are very nice. And Denrick organizes to prevent trampling of the dunes because, and storing things in the dunes like, kayaks, canoes, beach chairs. And there are more and more, and the more people do it, the more they're going to do it.
And again, that is a DENREC responsibility. I have talked with DENREC about their position on the city enforcing that. The issue is we don't have enforcement staff. So we have to be creative in our messaging. We do a cleanup of the dunes and the crossovers at the end of the season, but at that point, there's been a lot of activity in the dunes that we don't want.
I agree. I just think if there could be a little bit more information to people, to make them aware that the thick brittle stalks that are being planted to stabilize the dunes can be broken, destroyed by pedestrian traffic, or if you put your kayak there, just, you know, I'm sure people wouldn't mind being informed. And I think that's something that's lacking at the moment.
So I agree. I'm just going to equate this to a problem that we have on the bike trail with bike etiquette. And we have signage, it's on the bike maps, it's on the website on, appropriate bike etiquette. And I'm going to be quite frank, Ann, sometimes people just don't care. They're here on vacation, they want to do what they want to do, and they don't live here, so they really, and I'm being very frank, they don't care. It's our most valuable asset is our beach on many, many levels. And so we all appreciate that. Not everybody comes to visit Lewes with that same appreciation. So we can, discuss and consider additional signage and education, but it's not a fix-all for the issue.
I just wanted to know if anybody had any ideas, because I think, the more people think about it, maybe somebody can come up with an idea that works.
Okay, so there's the charge for the commission.
I do have one other question. This is in general. When we talked about the QR codes, when people scan the QR codes, is there a tally of how many times one gets scanned? And
So
that's
I
maintained?
did request that we get there's one that has a tally and one that doesn't. So I asked for the one that gives us the data, because that's important. It's a good question.
Yes, and like, yesterday, there was a family came on, they were within earshot of me, and the woman in the group said, I don't think we can put up what we brought. And she said, look what it says, I scanned the code, it's number 2. And they were using the Spanish version. And he said, I don't care, I'm putting it up. And she said, well, we're gonna get in trouble. And he said, I don't care. And in a moment, the lifeguard came over and said, I'm sorry, before you get any farther with this is our rule. And put it away, and they went and rented umbrellas from the Lions Club, and she said, that's why we scanned the QR code. And I thought, oh. So whether or not people are doing it, at least somebody did it, and that really kind of, that made me happy that she had done it and saw what we described as being what they had. So, but for the most part, I think it's really, truly helpful. So we'll keep on working with it and tweaking the language. I think the lifeguards also may have some language changes as things happen. And I said, every year, their program is going to evolve. what their issues are is going to evolve. For many years, jet skis were a problem. They're not a problem anymore. It's actually boaters crossing into the swimming area. So now they have air horns, since whistles don't seem to make a difference. You stand up and blast an air horn at them. When you've got, you know, kids and, you know, on floats and things, you need to have that.
You do.
So, we'll continue to tweak that.
Right. I think as the beach patrol interacts with the public and they get the questions from the public and have to tweak their answer so the public understands, then we can then tweak the QR codes.
Right, so that people can come in informed rather than find out once they arrive.
Right.
But
Right.
at least to not have a confrontation or to be angry, because sometimes it's like, well, where is that stated? And that's really the point of the QR code.
Correct.
Although I was told it would be nice if we're also in German and Russian. So,
And I must say that in
We'll
my
get there.
observations that, that the parking attendants are very, very cordial to the people who are parking. And anytime they have a question, I observe them helping them with the meters and helping the Hispanic population as well. So they're very friendly, and every time, you know, they wave when I ride through, so.
yep.
It's nice to hear. Thank
It's a
you.
hot job, it's a long, long day, and
And
they
we're walking back
interact.
from Savannah to Johnny Walker, Johnny Walker to Savannah all day long, so.
Yep, it's a tough job, and they do a great job trying to organize where parking spaces are, to let people know. They really are not just, you know, writing tickets. They're really trying to make sure people have as good an experience as they can. And I'm grateful for that. They're also using the sandwich boards, you know, bathrooms this way, because sometimes people don't know, is it at the snack stand, is it at the patrol, like where is, you know, just anything to kind of guide people and make it easier, so.
So I appreciate those comments about the job that the parking enforcement does, and I'll make sure that that gets out to them. Thank you. Okay, well, that was quite a reporting and discussion. Good conversation. So that brings us to old business. Item D1 is continued discussion and possible action regarding the Canalfront Playground. And I think Blue's got the, I know this was discussed last month. There was some discussion of needing to go to a workshop. My email didn't get to Kay in time because my computer was misbehaving. So we're kind of regrouping on this. We've had it on the agenda many times. I think it's been vetted, and I think that it's at a point where we can, the commission can take a vote, or if they're ready today, if there's more discussion needed. Blue has brought up the agenda that has each of the proposals on it. So if there is a refresher needed, we can go over that, or if the commission feels that through, I think it's been since March, that you're ready to take a vote and send a recommendation to mayor and city council on which vendor the commission agrees to, then we can take that path forward. So I open it up to the commissioners on how you would like to move forward.
One thing from our last meeting was, I believe that at least two of the vendors said that even, no matter what the date of expiration of the sales proposal was, that the prices are locked in.
Yes,
And so, that factor is.
Should
is
play into,
removed from- Yeah.
okay.
It's not in play anymore. I can start this by saying that I would make a motion that Lewes Parks and Recreation recommend to mayor and city council that they select Compan's plan for the playground for the Canalfront Park.
Second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion from the commission? Okay, we have a motion and a second to select Compan as the vendor for the playground replacement. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, motion carries. I will make a report to mayor and council. They have a workshop scheduled for Thursday, the 27th of June. It is a workshop and special meeting, so they are able to take a vote on it at that time. So hopefully we can get that moved forward and reach out to the contractor and get this moving.
So-
Because as noted earlier, it is weather sensitive.
You said that it was important.
Yes, I don't, I thought, I have a question, and I apologize because I was absent in the last meeting, but I know they were, as I recall, offered more expensive. Do we have the funds for, where are we with that in the city to pay for it?
So the funds have been, we have the $125,000 grant from the ORTP grant.
Is that
And-
matching?
It's not quite matching. The city has to, has budgeted for the balance of that.
Oh, okay.
There is an opportunity to get a second round of funding through that grant. I don't know, but we did reach out to the grantor, and he said, no, we can put in for another grant for it. So we'll be working on that as well. So
What is the minimum temperature for this park for, at night for setting up? Do you know, Rodney?
I don't, I can't, I don't want to guess. But it's like the tennis courts, it has to be,
it's similar to the tennis courts.
they normally pour blacktop to give you a great
Mhm.
foundation, and then they come with a rubberized surface over top of it. That's typically what
Mhm.
my experience has been. So it's expensive,
It is.
but
It's,
it works.
mhm. Any other comments on this topic? Okay. Tim, you looked like you had something you wanted to.
I was gonna ask a question, but I'll have an opportunity when it comes to council,
Okay,
and I might ask that question after this meeting.
okay,
If I can.
Oh.
Tim,
Okay.
this is mysterious.
Oh, okay. There's no mystery here. My question is going to be, is speaking to what was just shared, and that has to do with the asphalt foundation with the rubber, I assume it's a rubberized material on top, if it's similar to the tennis courts. And my question is about the fact that the park has drainage issues, and if we are putting a impervious material down in the form of asphalt, how is that being compensated, or how are we compensating for that change in perviosity in the park? That area is very wet.
It's very
It
wet.
tends to hold water a great deal, and that's my question.
so,
And I will also say, excuse me for interrupting,
no.
some parts of that park, if not the whole thing, is recognized as a Brownsfield, and it's been encapsulated, and that needs to be taken into consideration as well, I would suggest.
So I will speak to the representative from the company and ask if they can at least be on Zoom when this comes to mayor and council so that they can answer some of those questions.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I want to say, I assume there's asphalt under it. I haven't seen the specifications, but that's, in my experience, that's typically the way that surfacing is done.
Okay.
And it's impermeable. It's not a pervious surface.
Right, it would become.
Right.
Is that what the current surface is?
The current surface is just playground safety surfacing, yeah. So,
With dirt underneath it,
right,
Yeah.
as far as I know, I'm sure it's dirt.
There's a plastic
Mhm.
and mulch.
Mhm. So I will ask them to be available on Zoom.
Very much.
Okay. I think, did we get everybody's questions before we move on? Okay. So this brings us to old business item D2, but I think that Trina covered that in the report on George H.P. Smith Park. So I would just open it up if there's any other comments or questions on the Juneteenth celebration for June 22nd. Okay. So that brings us to new business. To lay some groundwork here. I think that these two items, E1 and E2, are very closely related, but I kept them as two separate items. I think that these two items are need to be a focus of the commission as a body. I see a need to have these for the near future as standing agenda items going forward so that we don't lose our traction with this. Item E1 is presentation, discussion, and possible action on the Municipal Code of the City of Lewes Chapter 40, Parks and Recreation Commission, Section A3, Powers and Duties, which requires the commission to engage in both short-range and long-range planning and report the plans to mayor and council no later than January 1st of each year. I think we have had discussions of short-term and long-term planning, but we have not made that report to mayor and council. And so I'm asking the commission that we come into compliance with city code and have these ongoing discussions and have a written report prepared for mayor and council. So I would expect that this would have to be pretty much wrapped up by the end of November so that it could go to the December mayor and city council, because the January meeting would be after January 1st. Code indicates prior to or no later than January 1st. So that's our timeline. It's aggressive, but I really feel that we need to get these projects written down, memorialized, and presented to mayor and council. So I think we had a rigorous discussion on the accessibility at Canalfront Park. I have taken the liberty to, as I was thinking about this, jot some projects down, and I will throw them on the table for discussion, prioritizing. We can then later tie it into agenda item E2 with developing the budget process, and I have some additional information on that process, which will come to light. So I think we have on the table, and again, looking at your individual parks, but also looking at the park system so that we're not compartmentalizing in our own parks and that we're thoughtfully planning out projects throughout the course of years. So we have the Canalfront Park paths and the accessibility, which we talked about, and we can discuss further as we move on. Some of the other projects that I have thought of is the continuation of the Great Marsh Park Master Plan. As you are all aware, we did send a concept plan to the state. We have to have this done by 2026, when our 20-year lease is up for renewal. One of the conditions of that land lease is that we have a master plan. I think we have a good start. There have been iterations before this that were dead in the water, so we at least got something for the state to look at. They did come back to us with a long list of questions, and has this assessment been done? Has that been done? What about signage? Julia and I had a conference call with two of the representatives from Parks and Recreation with the state, and just said, hey, you know, I kind of get the feel that this went out to all your department heads and they just responded with whatever, you know, came to mind. It went down to, well, the pictures in the concept plan are blurry. We need clearer pictures. They're just examples. So he said, yeah, that's kind of what happened. And he agreed that they may not have recognized that it was just a concept, that no, we haven't had environmental studies yet because we're not going to do that if this concept isn't. So we got to some common understanding, which was a good step. But we do need to continue that process. We do need to go back out to the public, continue to take public comment, and to continue to revise going forward. I think one of their concerns was perhaps that our reach was not as great. It was mostly to the city, where the park has a greater use by the public. So that was one of their observations. So Julia and I are working on, you know, how is that, what is that going to look like? So, so that was one. I think Christine and I have talked about some projects for Stango Park. I think we, during the budget process, presented to mayor and council about the ballast that's closest to Kings Highway and just having that area cleaned up. But there was discussion about, was there contamination in that area from the rail bed? So that scope kind of expanded. But it is an area that really is not, what would you use? What words would you use?
It's in need of beautification.
Thank you. That's very simply said. Yeah, I was making it difficult. Then in George H.P. Smith Park, and I don't think that this is anything that hasn't been discussed before. It's a huge project. We have scouring and erosion on the banks of Blockhouse Pond, which is a stormwater management pond. We have met with Envirotech and did a walk around with Todd Fritchman to kind of give us some suggestions on how we can shore this up. That will be a very expensive project and take significant time to get that done. So I think that that's something that the commission really needs to get a handle on and bring that to mayor and council, because it will be a very large project. I think that there are opportunities for grant funding to assist with that. And then the other thing, there are some long-term projects with the Marina and City Dock, which actually is not Parks and Rec Commission purview, but both the Marina and the City Dock are in the public parks. So it will have an impact on the park. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there. So those are the things that I've come up with. I will throw that out to all of you for discussion and additional items that you may see in your respective areas. So, thoughts?
I have one thing, but I guess, would it be the most helpful if each commissioner wrote up a list and got that to you? Because we all have vision plans
Mm-hmm.
for our purview. And then, because, well, like for mine, my budget is smaller, is going to be much smaller.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I can think that would be a capital improvement would be the lighting. And, because I know a number of people have contacted me about being part of a dark sky initiative.
Mm-hmm.
And the lights system, I'm sure at some point will need to be replaced. That's going to be a massively expensive capital project.
Yes.
And that certainly is already on the city's long-term radar, I'm sure. But for the most part, I think most of the changes that I would suggest just for where I am are mostly small, as opposed to something like that. So most of those are short-term. That would be a long-term plan, I would think, to have that in the budget a couple of years, a bit at a time,
Mm-hmm.
knowing how much it's gonna cost, like 3 years, 4 years out, start budgeting for it. But I don't know how, I don't know what will help you the most, is if we all give you information that you can compile into a report.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be more helpful?
I can do that, but not without further discussion from the commission. I think that just, getting 10 or 11 people's input on their park, that doesn't address the discussion of priorities. I think we have to have a discussion, what is short-term versus long-term? If I can just jump to item E2 for a moment with the discussion of the budget process. City staff have been asked, and we were asked last year to do this for FY25, and I think a lot of us went, I don't know that I can do that in this budget cycle, but to do a 3 to 5 year budget plan, right? So that's where this is going to fall, this discussion on, short range and long range goals is going to fall into the budget process. So I guess, I think the first thing that the commission needs to agree upon is what is short term and what is long term. Because if we do this compilation and everybody sends me something, I'm going to get 10 different ideas on what's a short-term, short-range plan versus a long-range plan. So I think the commission needs to start there with the discussions, and then we can move forward with further discussions.
Well, I think some of it's sort of like we were saying about Canalfront Park. It's heavily used, and the amenities in it have a life cycle. And then they wear out and need to be replaced. It's just like your home. You know when your heat pumps are going to need to be replaced. I think it's the same. All of us have things like that we know are going to need replacement or sprucing up or more as time goes along.
I kind of assumed that short-term meant what's happening this fiscal year and what am I going to input for next fiscal year? And that's, to me, that's short-term. After that, what do I envision fiscal years following that? What am I going to ask money for?
Okay, so you're saying short-term would be for looking forward to FY26, which begins April 1st.
Right. So when I'm
So
reporting to
within
the
that
city
year.
council at the end of this year, I'm going to say, I expect to ask for, maybe not exact dollars, but certain amounts of money to plant trees, yada, yada, yada.
Okay, So,
in FY '26.
okay,
That's
so,
what I had assumed. I don't know if that's right or not.
so that would be the short range.
That would be short range.
And then beyond that would be fiscal year 2027 for long range.
Right. 27 and beyond, right.
Oh,
I don't know if that makes sense.
Thoughts?
I was thinking more like, short-term, you meaning 3 to 5 years, and then long-term, anything beyond that, 10 years and out. So that's just, when you're setting short-term and long-term goals, I'm thinking 3 to 5 years. I'm just thinking from a manager, performance evaluation type of thing, so, because the short-term range I'm hearing you're saying is really, like,
That's what makes sense in my world, but if it doesn't make sense in everybody's world, I could be educated.
So, in this discussion of short-term and long-term, long range, this might be a helpful indicator. There are, I think, 8 or 9 subdivisions that are either in some stage of construction, or planning or approval. So if I can remember these, we have Lewes Waterfront Preserve over off of New Road. We have Roosevelt Landing, which is where the old Lewis Dairy was. We have Fisher's Cove, which the infrastructure is being put in now. We have Old Town at White's Pond, which houses are going in currently. We have White Ponds Preserve, which is 13 houses. The access road is parallel to Freeman's Highway, and it kind of tucks back in. And then Henlopen Bluff, which is still in the approval process. It has not been final approval from mayor and council. We have Dutchman's Harvest, which has been on a pause, but is active again. And then we have the Warrington property, which is Breakwater, which is kind of contiguous to Dutchman's Harvest. They're going to share a city access road into both of those developments. So, and we did just have the lodge open last year, I think, or so.
Jan, excuse me
Yes.
for interrupting. There's the other project at the opposite the DQ at the corner of Civic.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, that's right at the corner of Cape Henlopen Drive and Savannah. So that's coming on board as well. Thank you, Tim. So,
And I just thought of another one.
oh.
Mr. Burton's
Oh,
property.
yes, thank you, yeah. So I, somewhere, because I used some of this information for the budget justification for this current fiscal year, but I think that when we're considering long range and short range projects, I need people to start to think about all of these developments that are coming on board, and they are all in the city of Lewes. They're not out in the county, they're all in the city of Lewes. Several are along the bike trail, and it's going to funnel into our parks and beaches. So the part of the bike trail that goes through the city. So I think that long-range projects might fit in with, the when the developments are coming online and when we start to see higher use. So that was just something else to throw into the conversation of long range and short range.
Yeah, the way this kind of landed on me is that, you know, you talk about long range, short range, you know, I don't think we should try to pigeonhole it within, you know, it has to be under this number of years or that, but essentially take a look at projects and prioritize them. Because if we try to take a look at the, you know, the existing monies that exist and then try to mix and match, I think that we should be a little more conceptual in how we take a look at it, because there are other fundings that could become available. So if we would look at this like as a strategic planning process, where we put projects on the shelf that are possibilities, then when needs arise, then we can take a look and say, okay, we've already thought this out. Instead of in our minds, we're going to eliminate projects that might be good projects because we don't think there's funding there. Let's just put them on there, and that might fit into a broader scope or a broader picture 2 or 3 years down the road. So, you know, I kind of look at this as just an early brainstorming session. And we all have ideas for our park, but if we can listen to everybody else and what their ideas are, then maybe the original list that you had, you could say, well, you know, this doesn't make sense when we take a look at, you know, what other people's ideas are. And then we kind of just hone that after we start with a broader base. That's kind of how I looked at it.
Okay. Comments?
Yeah, I think also, when you get into long term, to me, it's thinking in a much, much larger context,
Mm-hmm.
which is what you're getting at.
Mm-hmm.
We all know we have parking problems. If we keep developing like this and have everybody drive to the parks, drive to the park, it's only gonna get worse. So maybe as a long term, we should start thinking about, you know, what direction do we want the town to go to in terms of people getting about? Maybe, and you can disagree with me, but maybe we need more footpaths. Maybe when we do these new neighborhood developments, we encourage the developers to include footpaths or bicycle paths. So everybody likes to talk about connectivity, but what does it mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I use Canalfront Canal Drive, Canal Park Drive, or whatever it is. There's no real good walking down there, and there are bikes all the time, and there are people, traffic, and it's only going to get worse.
On Cape Henlopen? Cape Henlopen Drive?
I'm talking about the drive along Canal Park here to go all the way.
Front Street?
Oh, Front Street,
Thank you.
yeah.
Pilot Town Road. You know,
Absolutely true. There's a problem now.
there's a problem now, and so you know, would be a long process to change the nature of that road, put a generous walking path and bike path to get some separation between vehicular and pedestrian traffic. But that's the kind of thing that, if we took that attitude and it affected policy, I mean, it seems to me that when people want to develop a piece of property, it's just focused on that property. It's really not focused on the town as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go to a place like, I'll never forget going to the Cotswolds, and you can get anywhere in that community on foot. And it's quite beautiful. And it's part of the park experience of that town. So, you know, individual parks and how they work and what their needs are, and the idea that, you know, there's a life expectancy for all the parks that make up each of these parks, you gotta do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you just replace the boardwalk, you know, for example.
Right.
It's a limited lifespan. But then this idea of going beyond that and saying, but what do we want the community to become? You know, when we get 4th Street open space preserved comes into play, how does that figure into our park system?
Right.
You know, we may not be responsible for caring for it and managing it. Maybe we will at some point. But we ought to be thinking ahead so that if we're not, at least we're coordinating with whoever that entity is that it fits with and complements everything else that's in town, that's open space and park space and so on. So, long term, that's what I see. And it's more, it's not just, it doesn't come from this body, it comes from the community at large.
So it was interesting, Rodney, to hear you talk about Front Street and the difficulty for pedestrian and bicycle traffic particularly, because there are sidewalks with the exception of where the inn at Canal Square.
Except you have to cross
So-
the street several
You
times.
do, you
Yeah,
do.
that's
But
an issue.
the Bike and Pedestrian Committee is working on a master plan. They've worked with DelDOT and WRA to develop a master plan, and they should be getting that soon. And I think that, perhaps it would be beneficial to have them come and talk to this body and say, here's what the recommendations were. And, they'll have some prioritization to do as well, but the three committees that I see that overlap very much so are Bike Ped, the Parks and Rec Commission, and Public Art. And, it may be beneficial to, these will be standing agenda items, is to have a representative from those committees come and just update this committee on what they're working on.
May I speak to this, please?
Please.
First of all, I want to commend you and this committee for taking this up. As a council person, it will be very, very helpful if there is a understanding of what the financial demands are going to be on the city coffers. And so what you all do here is very important and relevant to your council. You just mentioned 3 different committees that have a piece of this. I would actually suggest there's a 4th one, and that would be the Planning Commission.
Mm-hmm.
What I was thinking as I was listening to Rodney and the other comments that are made here, is that I could actually foresee you, I'd like you all to consider this. This is a suggestion. The idea that you create a subcommittee that would work in turn with subcommittees made up of those other committees, so that there could be that kind of genesis of ideas and really just thorough investigation, thorough discussion that you might not have if a representative from a committee comes and makes a presentation to this group. And I know committee work can be arduous. It's a time suck many times, but if it's constructed well, it can be really, really helpful and very, very beneficial. The other thing I'd like to this is a suggestion. When you're thinking about long-term and short-term, I think it might be helpful if you also think about maintenance versus capital improvements. And that is a critical component of whatever planning you're doing. And this is a planning exercise. This is what Janet is speaking to. This is a critical need that this committee has for its future. And to the extent that I can put that out there for you all to consider, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
I think the subcommittee idea is a good one, because I read the article about Bike Ped, and I had to agree. I mean, bicycle traffic on Saturday was, it's a miracle no one was killed, and that no one was run over, or it was bad. And so I think that we do need to work together to make it safe, pleasant, and useful. It was a useful way to get around, rather than being a menace. So I would certainly volunteer to be on a subcommittee if they could meet after 5. 5 or later, that would be great. Planning Commission, does a long-range plan rewrite, supposed to be every 5 to 10 years.
Mhm.
And I think it should include a discussion from this commission, especially because capital improvements are, a serious thing to have on radar for planning.
Mhm.
So, between whether it's BPW or, straight City Hall, I don't know, but I think that's a good idea to have it out there. Then it's not a surprise.
Right, okay. So Kay thinks that subcommittee is a good idea and has just volunteered. Are there, do I have another one? Marty?
Serve on it,
Okay.
yeah.
So what,
I'd be interested to,
Ann?
talking to my neighbor, Sumner, who had ideas about Town Road. So, yes, I think that would be really interesting. There's something that I think we should think about. I mean, do we want to privilege people who live here? Or do we want to see this place as essentially a tourist place? I think there is something that we need to think about also, in that area, even if it's not directly linked.
Right. Well, I think
You know what I mean?
it's both. I mean, we're a small community and our population grows by, tens of thousands in the summer. So I think that we need to look at both sides of that when we're looking at these opportunities. So. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like business versus resident. That-
Right,
There's
right.
that tension, you're always trying to please as many people as you can and have as good experience as you can for as many people. You can't forget about anybody.
So then I'm going to take a shot at a first.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Mark.
Yeah, I'd also be interested in being in that as well.
Okay,
That
hold on.
subcommittee.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have one vacancy. That would be the most that I can put on that committee.
Because then we're a quorum.
Mm-hmm.
Break it into 2 subs.
2 subcommittees? I could have one subcommittee work with public art and one work with bike ped.
You could do it that way. But you're gonna have, you have those other 2 committees that are not part of that discussion, right?
Do you want to
Right.
do Parks and Planning Commission as well?
Mm-hmm. We have this is an 11-member commission, so with 4, we're okay, but we can't go any higher than that.
It's for this subcommittee for this.
Yes.
Yeah. I
Is that
can
right,
step
Tim?
back if you have somebody else you want on there, because I think some of you have more to do with long and short-term planning than me, but if you want to put somebody else on there than me, fine.
Are you all right with that?
I'm all right with that, yeah.
So then Kay, Ann, and Mark? Is that good? All right. So what I can do is the bike ped committee is meeting Tuesday, 25th, a week from tomorrow. If any of you who have volunteered for the subcommittee would like to attend that meeting, I can get this agenda. Their agenda has to be posted tomorrow. So I can talk with that committee chair is Mary Roth and let her know that I'd like to add this to that agenda, and we can start the discussions with them. PAC is not meeting in June, so that'll have to come along in July. But I'll give the chair of PAC, Heidi Lowe, kind of a heads up on what we're thinking. But I think that it's good for, particularly in this collaboration, is to have the commissioners from this commission be present at the bike ped and PAC to kind of present what we're doing and the opportunity to collaborate. And then I'll talk with Janelle about the planning commission.
Where and when is Bike Ped?
Bike ped is, meets at council chambers at 5:30. 5:30, yep,
Okay, on the 25th.
25th, yes.
Okay, great.
Any,
And were you looking at this as being, because I heard it as being like a subcommittee on the planning commission?
it would be having members of the planning commission. So ultimately, this will be a Parks and Rec Commission subcommittee with members from LPC, Public Art, Bike Ped,
Okay.
right? But it's really for this commission to look at long and short-term, strategic planning, whatever we want to call it at this stage of development.
From those other groups?
Right, because
Okay, all right.
because the bike ped has a master plan coming, because public art is in the parks. So, and then the planning commission, they do come to Parks and Rec for recommendations. But I think that that's an area that this commission can improve as well with their feedback to the planning commission.
I can say, having been on planning commission for a long time, I always hoped this commission would come out and say no for a lot of reasons, so that we could hang our hat on that. So I think a really strong report, really strong opinions would be really helpful to planning commission.
No, I think this is conversations that are long overdue. And so I'm glad that we're having this discussion.
May I jump in and make one more comment? This might be obvious to all of you, but I'm gonna feel better if I articulate this. What Janet did in the very beginning of this discussion by enumerating the number of subdivisions that are being online and will be constructed, and the hundreds of additional living units that are going to be constructed in this city during, let's say during the next 5 to 7 years, these projects will all be built out, they'll be completed. What's really different about what is happening with these new projects is that the developers are creating private amenities for their buyers of those properties. But none of us in the public will have privileges to use any of those amenities. Those people, when they want to use for example, a children's playground or a pickleball court possibly, or whatever is offered in the parks that you all offer, a concert, for example, with Christine and Bill's, concerts here. They're not staying in their communities, in their private communities. They're coming into public parks. And the demands are growing on this real estate that you all are managing. And I cannot encourage you enough and express my appreciation for your ability to jump into that planning and really figure out how we're gonna meet the demands and services of all these new residents of Lewes. It's a very unbalanced system that we have that we're growing into.
Do we know, Tim, how many people that's going to? Do we have an idea?
Well, I could certainly tell, I could go through the list and tell you how many units are being constructed, and then if you just do two per.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not.
It's gonna be more than that.
At all, but it needs to be, I could do that for you and provide that to you. But it's hundreds of more residents coming into this city with all the privileges that we all have, but they're gonna also have their own private amenities.
I think, Anne, when I did it for mayor and council for budgeting purposes to just get a rough number, I think it was, and this was 2 people per unit, which we know it's most likely not going to be, but it was, especially with the size of some of the houses being built, it was at least 1,000, and that didn't include the Warrington property, because that wasn't in the headlights at the time. I can't recall if Dutchman's Harvest was included, because that was kind of in limbo, and Verdon wasn't, because he was not, he hadn't progressed to that stage yet, but all of the others were, and it was upwards of 1,000 people.
And I will remind you all that at the lodge, there are 3 levels
Mhm.
of living there, and the folks who live in the independent apartments there are mobile, they have cars, they're in and around the park in the
It's
city.
basically they're renting an apartment
That's
at the
correct.
lodge.
And our amenities are their amenities. And they're residents of the city. And they have all these benefits, and I'm not suggesting that they shouldn't, but we just need to understand how this population of the city is growing. And it's growing not incrementally, but big strides at a time.
So how many are we today, just for me to get an idea?
I'm sorry?
How many are we today?
We're just around, last census I saw was just shy of 3,500.
Mhm.
And, and we will be well over 4,000 in the next several years, well over. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
I just have a question, and I don't want to prolong the meeting anymore, but what are you hoping to accomplish between now and November?
A lot.
So,
Maybe short term, you might do better on the short term, the long
Right.
term might take longer.
right. So, because we have a very small window, I think that we're working towards coming into compliance with code. I think that, the report can indicate we had this amount of time to work to get this together, and it is a living document. I see it as a living document. Yes, and because guess what? Circumstances are going to change, right? I mean, one natural disaster and we've got a whole shift, right? I don't want to say that, but yeah, I know, right. So that would be the approach that I think the commission should take in this first dive into this, is that it's not going to be perfect, that we can, and it's going to be a lot of work. Even, I don't want anybody to say, well, okay, we don't need perfection, so we're not going to put our all into this. I think it's an opportunity for this commission to shine. It will be directly tied to the budget, so as you start to think about this project, and we'll go into that item in a minute, but as you start to think about this project, you're going to be thinking about budgets too. So,
I'd like to, if you're done, mention something about the trees.
did I scare you?
Sorry, something about my vision on what I'm doing with the tree program. So, I've made lists and lists of, trees and where they are. As to the trees in the parks, I think there are some parks that probably need little or no additional plantings. There's some parks where I think we have opportunities for a fair amount of more trees. And there's a more and more interest within the citizenry of the city as to the tree canopy, and I'd really like to lay out what I think the opportunities are for improving the tree canopy on city property. So what I'm going to do is reach out to each of the park commissioners and tell you what I think the status is for your park, and you can tell me if you agree or not. And like I say, some parks, it's basically maintaining the trees we have, maybe one more tree, maybe not. Some parks, I think there's more opportunity. And then I'm doing the same thing with all the streets. We have fair number of streets we could put trees on, and some are fully treed and some aren't. And as to the future, I've started, you know, Henlope and Bluff, the plans I saw have about 100 trees. The other properties, Roosevelt Landing has 8 street trees. The other properties I haven't gotten good information on, so I'm not sure. But I'm trying to track down how many more street trees we'll be responsible for in the long run. So, that's long-term planning for me.
That's good. I think everybody, you know, needs to think about just that. And it doesn't mean that you can't interact with each other in this planning process. I encourage it. Just don't have a quorum when you do it. You know, but I think it's important for you to be talking to each other as well. So I have my charge to get the subcommittee together. One of the things that I do want to suggest, and I'm thinking it might come from members from Parks and Rec, but once we establish a subcommittee, which is not a work group, we need to have meeting minutes of the subcommittees.
That was
So,
my next question
Oh, I'm the
was,
secretary. I'm
was-
supposed to go to these meetings and take his minutes.
puts you
I'm
back
sorry I
on,
interrupted you.
puts you back
well,
on.
because that was my question. So we are a subcommittee as of now. So-
Of Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec. So when we go to Bike Ped, Public Art, Planning Commission, wherever we go, as this subcommittee, we're representing everybody, but we need to have minutes of those formal meetings.
So when this subcommittee gets together,
Even if we met at a restaurant, do we have to have an agenda if we meet at a restaurant?
you have to have an agenda, and it has to be a public meeting.
Okay,
It's a subcommittee of a city committee.
got it.
So it does have to be agended. It does have to be, you know, like any other meeting that we set up. Yep, FOIA compliant. And then the meeting minutes. Now, I would say that once we get members from the other 3 city committees, that body can determine who's going to be the chair, who's going to be the vice chair, who's going to be the secretary. So that subcommittee will make that determination at their first meeting.
But I thought I was made secretary of Parks and Rec, and that meant I would do minutes for all subcommittees? Because Jackie does minutes for the Parks and Rec.
Correct.
I would love it if you would.
So put me on
A
your
lot.
mailing list.
All right.
Love it.
Or if,
So
Thank
we're,
you.
Or maybe I could
Just-
delegate.
well,
Thank
and
you.
also
We'll talk
kind of
about
hearing how this is coming together, maybe it would be better if you were on and I was not.
No, I think
And
it's
then-
important that you're on it, and we'll talk later about whether I could delegate the authority to somebody else to write the minutes up.
No, 4 is
I
okay.
mean,
4 is okay.
Yeah.
Beyond 4 for us
for,
is not.
yeah, because we're 11. Well, right now we're 10 because we have a vacancy, but
Yeah.
we're 11.
Yeah, my concern would be is that we have these other committees that we want to combine with. We don't want to get a group that's too large.
So I think, so there's 3 other committees. I think that if there's one representative from each committee, I think that should be okay. Because it is, the focus is on the planning for Parks and Rec. We want their input. So
Right.
those committees need to be thoughtful about who gets on this committee, this subcommittee.
Right, this
Sorry.
subcommittee is helping us,
Yes,
so we're the driver here. And
Correct.
we're the ones who need voices from others.
yes.
Got it.
Okay. So are we clear? Are there questions? Okay. Well, thank you for volunteering for this. I think it's a good start. I would ask all of the members to, think about where you would like to go from here for moving forward. But this will be a standing agenda item because we've got to get something together pretty soon. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Just actually, let me, for the record, take a motion that we approve or do I have a motion to approve the identified Parks and Rec Commission members for members of the subcommittee?
So moved.
Thank you, Kay. Is there a
Second.
second? Marty, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, we have a subcommittee. Okay, I'm sorry. This has been a long meeting, but we have one more agenda item. So we're 3 months into FY '25, and I'm going to talk about FY '26. I usually start this in like September, but I think we need to start a little bit earlier. So Ellen, Lorraine, and I, we do a monthly department managers meeting and try and pick a topic for discussion each month that is relevant to all of the departments and their operations within the city. And in May, or actually it was June 4th, our topic was preparation for budgeting. And I think that, we get to April 1st and we all take a deep breath and we go, I don't have to think about this again until, fall, December. What the department managers are being asked to do is to develop a multi-year budget. So 3 to 5 years. So again, this ties into our previous discussion on the short range, long range planning. So some of the things that we talked about was really highlighting the achievements of staff, highlighting the achievements of the department, highlighting the achievements of committees and commissions. This is a unique group because I'm the chair and I'm also a staff. So I try to give an overview of some of the more major accomplishments for parks and the Parks and Recreation Commission. But I think that's important. The way that you can help me with that is to highlight what you've done in your park for the year, because you know better than I, right, what you've done. So if that can be a part of your request, and then I put it into the PowerPoint. What are the assumptions that are being made during multi-year budgeting? So we just talked about the assumptions based on all of these new developments that are coming in and what is the potential impact on the parks. So as you think about the budget for 2026, you're going to start to see in this time period some increased use of the parks, and even that little anecdotal information is helpful. It's an assumption on how you're assessing information, how it will impact trash, right? Just use like for the maintenance department, right? 10 new developments coming in. What's the assumption that is the increase in trash pickup? So for the parks, Kay, what's at the beach, the assumptions of increased usage of the beaches?
We might have to go to carry in, carry out.
Yeah.
If trash becomes
Right.
just too much of a burden and it's not successful.
Right. So well, this was directed at department managers, and the examples were directed, you know, for specific manager departments. I would ask that the commission think about those things when you're putting your budget together. Data, mayor and council love data, right? Data is, I mean, it's proof that this is why we're asking what we're asking for. If there are equipment needs for, and I don't think that that's, I mean, it hasn't been a huge lift for Parks and Rec Commission, but if there are equipment needs, why? How does that make the work of the commission more efficient, more effective? Let's see, what else? I think that was pretty much it. I think that in the past, some of you, you know, have freed up your schedule to come to the budget hearings. I think I've done a fairly decent job justifying the budget, but sometimes it's good to have the park commissioners there. You can add additional information to what I'm presenting to mayor and council. This is your budget, so I think that it's important for commissioners, while their schedule allows, to be there to defend their budget. That schedule goes out, by December. The budget hearings are held every Friday through the month of February and into early March. So you would know well enough in advance when the Parks and Rec Commission budget is going to be presented. It's important, and staff can help, Julia can help you with this, to have proposals and estimates for work that you want to see done in your parks for the coming year. So we're going to be asking, and we do this every year, we're going to be asking for proposals and estimates in September, October, November for work that's going to be done in April or May. So I always just bump those proposals up a little bit, because by the time we get to the work, it's probably going to be a little bit more. So I would like you all to start to think about that multi-year budget, that short-term, long-term planning, and the justifications for that, and estimates, because even if we're looking at something for 3 years out and we're getting a proposal for it now, that's just a benchmark. We know it's going to go up, but we, you know, get the increase, the new proposal closer to the time frame that we're looking to get that work done. So I know I'm pushing you all a bit tonight. I appreciate your time tonight and having these discussions, and we'll continue with these going forward. Anne?
Yeah, I probably have a basic question, but if I have a proposal, I'm thinking of the racks, I'm sorry, I'm coming back with that. Do I need your agreement to propose the proposal? You see what I mean?
So I think we're talking about two different types of proposals. When we have a job, let's say Marty has some trees that need to be removed in one of the parks. So we'll call the contractor and they send us a proposal to do that work. You're talking about the kayak racks.
I just like a definition of proposal. You're telling, I understand that you're telling us to think about proposals.
I'm not sure what the question is.
If I could, the way I understand it, if there's something that somebody wants to do, some commissioner wants to see done in the park, I think it's a good idea. Some of those things need to come before the
right,
So the commission can say, yes, that's a good idea, you should pursue that, or no, we really don't think that's a good idea, and here's why. So you don't go to the trouble of actually making that proposal and recommendation, given costs, if it turns out that the commission is really not in support of that. And we have had things in the past,
mm-hmm,
where we've looked at them and determined, we just can't do this.
Right.
And the decision was no.
right.
And I think that's what you're talking about.
Well, I'm talking about how do you get things on the agenda?
Oh, well, I think we've talked about that previously. If a commissioner has something that, as Rodney said, they want to do in the park, it would have to come to, some things would have to come to Parks and Rec if it's regular maintenance, but if it's something beyond regular maintenance or something that was not in the budget for that fiscal year, it would have to come to Parks and Rec. So when you say you have a proposal to discuss kayak racks on the beaches, that would be brought up to the chair of the committee to agenda it for a meeting. Okay?
So, every month you send out a notice that if we have any agenda items to let you know, so that's part of that
Exactly,
process.
exactly, yes. I think that, you know, I'm the chair, but I'm not a voting member. I do the agenda, but I think it's important to have commissioners have the opportunity to engage in the agenda-setting process. So anything that, you know, beyond the routine maintenance and what's budgeted for each of your parks, for the Parks and Rec Commission would, you know, certainly come for an agenda discussion. Clear as mud, right? I think I've worn you all out tonight. Anything else on the budget? So I will put that on upcoming agendas as a standing item for discussion, just so that we can keep it fresh. And at this point, I think we are at the point for item F, public comment. Blue, do we have anybody online for public comment? No hands are raised. Anybody in the audience here tonight? Sir, could you please come up to the podium and state your name and where you live?
My name's Dave Carnevale. Been a resident of Lewes for about 32 years. More recently, my family and I moved into town, and it was right around the time, right before the surfacing of the tennis court and the pickleball court had taken place. So I had, you know, many days of enjoying playing pickleball while I was there. I am living between here and North Carolina intermittently. My primary residence is here, though, but I've been gone, and then I come back, and I've noticed that nobody's playing pickleball here anymore. And I've asked some people when I was down here, you know, what is going on, and they said that the new surface is not really appropriate for pickleball, and that these and I said, you know, what's going on? And I've just gotten a lot of different answers from people. Some people said, you know, I don't know what they're doing. One person said they were going to try to put it in the get a amount budgeted, so maybe next year they were going to take one of the courts and make it dedicated to pickleball and have the same company resurface it so it would be more conducive to pickleball. And so I haven't heard anything definite. And I I was just coincidentally got an email and saw that this meeting was going on today, so I just walked over and hope this is appropriate that I ask this question now, but just curious, and just to take, piggyback on what Tim had said earlier, back when a lot of these people were playing pickleball here, they do live in private residences outside the Lewes area. So when everybody stopped playing here, those pickleball games are all invite only, and people like myself that just live in Lewes that don't have any other places to play are more impacted by the fact that the surface didn't work out right. And so I was just curious, what is going to, moving forward, what is going to happen with that issue?
So the city has communicated with the manufacturer and the company that installed the Premier surface on multiple occasions over the past year and a half, nearly 2 years since they were installed. The manufacturer and the installer stand by their product and their installation practices. And they were not recommending that the city make any adjustments to the courts based on dead spots or bad bounces, because that would negate the 25-year warranty. So the city then did ask them to come to a workshop in October of 2023 to address again the mayor and council's concerns and the concerns of the public. Again, they stood by their product and their installation practices. We inquired if it would be acceptable to remove the Premier surface on one tennis court and have it resurfaced to the asphalt, which is what we had previously. And they said, yes, they could do that. Yes, it would not impact the warranty. We got an estimate. It was $150,000 to do that. The city had already paid upwards of $150,000 to resurface with the Premier. And the mayor and council decided not to resurface. So the surface that we have today is the surface that remains for pickleball and tennis court players in the city of Lewes.
Right. Before that company came in and, did their work, from what I understand, but like I said, I'm just hearing little pieces here and there, that the city was warned that this tennis court surface would not work because there were people that knew other courts that they had resurfaced and they were unsuccessful in making it conducive to pickleball.
So the city had to make a decision on the continual repair of the asphalt surface, which comes at a cost to the city. And as you had mentioned, many of the pickleball players are not city residents who are paying taxes. So mayor and council had to make a determination of what is, a product that will not require as much maintenance. Is the surface not acceptable to pickleball players? To some who play at a competitive level, yes. For recreational players, we haven't heard from them per se. So the surface that we have is the surface that will remain at the courts.
Do you think that if...
I'm going to, one more question, and then we have to take comments from other people. So you have one more question, please, sir.
Okay. I was just saying, when there is a goal in mind and it's unsuccessful and the goal failed, do you just table that and just group think that, okay, we're done with that? Or do you bring it up again and come up with other objectives to try to meet that goal instead of just
So I think,
allowing a failed goal?
part of it is managing expectations. I think that the goal failed for some, but not for all. Mayor and council took this very seriously, as did the Parks and Rec Commission. Several years ago, there was a subcommittee of the Parks and Rec Commission to look at where would we possibly be able to build another strictly pickleball facility, and we do not have the space in the city to do that. So what we have now is what we have now. And when the courts need to be resurfaced again, we'll go through the public process as we did with this past process, and we'll take, under consideration the public's input. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions from the audience? Please come forward. Thank you.
My name is Trish Harmer, and I live on McPhee Street here in town. And I want to thank you for bringing up the accessibility, the handicap accessibility portion of the meeting with regards to Canalfront Park, because I have a letter here that I was going to give to some of you, not realizing that you were going to bring it on the agenda today, and I'm so happy you did that. I have personal experience with the difficulty of trying to push a wheelchair with an adult in it along the paths in the Canalfront Park. So it is close to home for me, and I know we're not the only ones. There are so many wonderful things that happen at that park, including, the concerts. I don't have to tell you all the stuff, but there are just so many wonderful things about just being there and enjoying the view and having a picnic and so forth. And, it's great to have the restroom, but how do we get there?
Right.
It's like, this wasn't connected. But, I found, what about the gravel that's already on, for example, the bike paths? Those wheels, those tires can maneuver on that kind of very fine gravel just fine. I'd hate to see something that's permeable, or non-permeable rather, overtake the park, or even more decking that's already there, the wood decking that's already there, some more of that leads you to the restroom. So anyway, I'm glad that you put that on the agenda. Thank you so much for talking about it tonight. And I have a letter, if I can. Can
Sure,
I give you some copies?
you can submit that. Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
all right.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments. Yes, that's fine.
I'd like to add a comment. I was talking to Trish
you.
a couple of weeks ago, and I've known Trish for quite a while, and her nephew, used to be a little child, now he's a grown adult, and it is a struggle for them. But what really hit home for me was her husband, Mark. I was talking to him, and he was saying that I can push him there to the restrooms. He says it's a little bit of it's a struggle for me, but his fear was, and this really hit home to me, is he didn't want to show his nephew that it's a struggle, because he was afraid that the nephew would say, well, we don't have to go there. And this is one place where he has a little bit of peace and tranquility on the deck with a little fishing rod, just to enjoy himself. And what hit home was Mark saying, I don't want him to see me struggling, just because he was afraid that would discourage him from going and enjoying something that he does enjoy.
Thank you. Any other questions? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Good, you're so excited you can't even get it out, Rodney.
I third it.
Mark, second. All in favor? Aye. And I suppose there's no opposition. Oh, thank you, everyone.